It was the kind of crime no one could have predicted. A quiet suburban home, two sisters asleep under the same roof, and by morning, one would be gone forever, while the other stood in shock, confessing to a crime that left an entire community reeling. Claire Elise Miller was only 14 years old when her name made national headlines. To anyone looking in from the outside, the Miller family of Manheim Township, Pennsylvania, seemed stable, even loving. Photos showed them smiling together, Claire often seen pushing her older sister's wheelchair or laughing alongside her in family snapshots. But those smiles masked something far darker. Helen Miller, the eldest, was 19 years old. She lived with severe cerebral palsy, a condition that left her nonverbal, unable to walk, and fully dependent on those around her. Yet despite her challenges, Helen was known for her gentle spirit. Family and friends described her as peaceful, someone who found comfort in music and the soft glow of her bedroom lamp. She could not speak, but she radiated warmth, and to those who knew her, she mattered deeply. Claire, on the other hand, was quietly unraveling. To her classmates, she was just another teenager on TikTok, sharing goofy clips one day and cryptic, unsettling ones the next. Behind the screen, she was hearing voices, questioning her own reality, and confessing that she believed she was trapped inside a simulation. Her parents had already sought help, hospitalizing her for psychiatric care, but the true depth of her struggle was far greater than anyone realized. On the night of February 22, 2021, those hidden battles took a horrific turn. After her parents had gone to bed, Claire crept into her sister's room with a kitchen knife. There was no argument, no outburst, just silence. In that silence, she ended Helen's life. Moments later, Claire dialed 911 herself. Her voice trembled as she told the dispatcher exactly what she had done. When police arrived, the sight was chilling. Claire stood outside in tears, her pajama pants stained with blood. Inside, Helen lay in bed, a knife lodged in her neck. She was rushed to the hospital, but the injuries were too severe. By sunrise, one daughter was dead, and the other was under arrest. The law did not treat Claire gently. In Pennsylvania, anyone charged with homicide, even minors, is automatically tried as an adult. Her defense attorneys argued she suffered from schizophrenia spectrum disorder, her sense of reality fractured by hallucinations and delusions. Psychiatrists supported the claim, but prosecutors pointed to the methodical nature of the act, waiting until her parents were asleep, choosing her weapon, and carrying it out without provocation. In February 2023, Claire pleaded guilty but mentally ill to third-degree murder. The sentence, 12 to 40 years in prison. She was transferred to Muncie State Correctional Institution, where psychiatric treatment units now try to manage her condition. For the Miller family, the loss was almost too great to process. They lost Helen to violence and Claire to the justice system, all in a single night. Counselors were brought into schools, crisis hotlines saw a surge in calls, and a community that once felt safe was shaken to its core. Helen's voice may never have been heard, but her life was meaningful. And Claire's, though not ended, is now defined by tragedy and treatment behind prison walls. Their story stands as a haunting reminder that sometimes the most devastating dangers are not strangers lurking outside, but hidden battles fought within the people we love most. And in that quiet Pennsylvania suburb, the Miller case became a chilling example of what happens when untreated mental illness collides with violence. A story that left many asking, how could anyone have seen it coming?
Join the investigation. Subscribe now for more cold cases.
In a quiet suburban town in Wisconsin, A 12-year-old girl was left for dead by her two best friends, not out of anger, not out of jealousy, but because they believed a fictional internet character demanded it. What happened that day would shock the nation and forever blur the line between fantasy and reality. Morgan Geyser and Anissa Weier were ordinary 12-year-olds in many ways. They went to school, attended sleepovers, and laughed with friends. Among those friends was Peyton Leutner, known as Bella, a trusting girl who spent countless hours with them, sharing secrets, games, and smiles. But that trust would be betrayed in the most horrifying way imaginable. Morgan had long been drawn to fantasy and horror, especially the creepypasta community, online stories crafted by users to frighten and entertain. Among these tales was Slender Man, a tall, faceless figure in a black suit said to stalk children and drive them to madness. Though entirely fictional, Morgan became convinced he was real. She believed that by carrying out a sacrifice, she could protect her family and earn a place in Slenderman's mysterious mansion hidden deep in the woods. Anissa, more shy and impressionable, was drawn in as well. Together, their imaginations merged into a dangerous, shared delusion. The plan was chillingly deliberate. The night before the attack, the three girls had a seemingly innocent sleepover at Morgan's house. They painted their nails, ate donuts, and watched movies. Yet while Bella slept, Morgan and Anissa whispered about their plan, cementing the steps that would soon turn their friend's life upside down. The following morning, under the guise of going to the park, they lured Bella to David's Park, a wooded area nearby. Their first attempt, inside a public bathroom, failed. Panic flickered across their faces, but deeper in the woods, Morgan's resolve returned. She pinned Bella to the ground while Anissa urged her on. Then came the knife. 19 stab wounds, 2 of which struck major organs and one that missed a critical artery by mere millimeters. Bella's life hung by a thread. Believing she would die, they left her in the dirt and began their journey on foot toward Nicollet National Forest, nearly 200 miles away, dreaming of joining Slenderman. But Bella refused to die. Despite extreme blood loss and life-threatening injuries, she crawled from the woods to a nearby bike path, where a passing cyclist discovered her and called 911. Rushed to surgery, doctors later said that even a slightly deeper wound would have been fatal. Against all odds, Bella survived. Police soon found Morgan and Anissa walking along a highway. Backpacks filled with snacks, water, and the bloody knife. In interviews, both recounted the plan in chilling detail. Morgan admitted, "It was weird, I felt no remorse," while Anissa said she had been terrified but felt compelled to obey. Psychological evaluations revealed stark differences. Morgan was diagnosed with early-onset schizophrenia, experiencing hallucinations and delusions involving Slenderman and other fictional creatures. Anissa, while not psychotic, was highly impressionable, her sense of morality warped by Morgan's influence. The legal process was complex. Both girls faced attempted first-degree intentional homicide charges. Under Wisconsin law, even minors can be prosecuted as adults in such serious cases. In 2017, Anissa pleaded guilty to attempted second-degree homicide, ultimately deemed not criminally responsible due to mental illness, and was sentenced to up to 25 years in a secure psychiatric facility. She was granted conditional release in 2021 under strict supervision. Morgan, pleading guilty as well, was found not guilty by reason of mental disease and sentenced to up to 40 years in a mental institution. She remains confined, with attorneys still seeking conditional release. Bella endured a long, painful recovery, physically and emotionally. Though she rarely speaks publicly, she has shown remarkable strength, forgiving her attackers while never forgetting the ordeal they inflicted. The Slender Man case became a cultural flashpoint, raising urgent questions. How much influence can online horror have on young minds? At what point does fantasy become criminal intent? And, most hauntingly, how close did we come to burying a child over a monster that never existed? For Waukesha, this attack was a stark warning. Obsession, mental illness, and the blurring of reality can turn the familiar into the unimaginable, a darkness hiding in the most innocent of faces.
Another case is waiting. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it.
In a quiet South Carolina home, a 3-year-old girl arrived for what was meant to be a brief, safe visit. By the end of the week, Serenity Richardson was dead, beaten to death by the very people entrusted to care for her. The horror of her final days would shock a community and haunt a nation. Erica Mae Butts and Shanita Latrice Cunningham were not strangers to Serenity Richardson. They were supposed to be her protectors. But in November 2009, the home, meant to offer comfort and safety, became a scene of unimaginable horror. Serenity, only 3 years old, had been sent from Detroit to Summerville, South Carolina, while her mother, Yisha Richardson, managed a stressful move. The arrangement seemed innocent, even wise, a temporary stay with a trusted friend and godmother. Yet within hours of her arrival, the nightmare began. Over just a few days, Butts and Cunningham subjected Serenity to relentless and escalating abuse. The weapons of choice were ordinary, belts, plastic coat hangers, and raw physical force, but the results were devastating. Bruises layered on top of bruises, contusions across her tiny arms, legs, and back. Internal injuries and blunt trauma all testified to a methodical cruelty. The reasons for punishment were as ordinary as they were horrifying. Potty training accidents, minor childish missteps, or spilled drinks. No one intervened. No one stopped the violence, which only intensified with every hour that passed. By the day emergency responders arrived, Serenity's body bore the evidence of sustained torment. She lay lifeless, every inch of her small frame marked by trauma old and new. Paramedics rushed her to the hospital, but she was beyond saving. The coroner later called it one of the worst cases of child abuse he had ever witnessed. A slow, deliberate series of acts by adults entrusted with a child's life. Investigators quickly focused on Butts and Cunningham. During police interrogations, both initially attempted to shift blame, offering conflicting stories, but forensic evidence, witness statements, and the visible layering of injuries left little doubt. Ultimately, both women admitted to their actions. In 2011, Erica Butts entered an Alford plea, acknowledging that the prosecution had enough evidence to convict her without formally admitting guilt. Cunningham pleaded guilty outright. The sentencing hearing was emotionally devastating. As the judge pronounced life sentences without parole, Butts collapsed to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably, while Cunningham fainted moments later. The courtroom was silent with disbelief at the irony. The same women who had mercilessly beaten a toddler to death now could not stand to face the consequences. Serenity's mother gave a tearful statement, describing her daughter's laughter, her favorite toys, and the bright, trusting eyes that would never see another day. She spoke of the crushing guilt she would carry for trusting someone who became a monster. The case drew national attention, exposing a horrifying reality. Sometimes danger hides where it is least expected. It highlighted the vulnerability of children and the devastating consequences of misplaced trust. Serenity's death became a rallying cry for child protection advocates, a symbol of how abuse can remain hidden behind friendly faces and well-intentioned arrangements. Today, Butts and Cunningham remain in prison, serving life sentences without the possibility of parole. But Serenity's story endures. Her short life, though stolen far too soon, is remembered as a testament to innocence lost and the importance of vigilance in protecting the most vulnerable. Her name reminds us that cruelty can hide in plain sight and that even the most trusted adults are capable of unspeakable acts. The tragedy of Serenity Richardson stands as a stark warning. The most horrifying crimes are often committed not by strangers, but by those we choose to trust, and evil can hide quietly behind familiar faces.
Don't let this mystery go cold. Hit subscribe for the next case.
In August 2003, the quiet town of Nashua, New Hampshire was shaken to its core when 16-year-old Nicole Kacinskis and her boyfriend, 18-year-old William Billy Sullivan, orchestrated the brutal murder of Nicole's own mother, Jean Domenico. Nicole and Billy's relationship began in May 2002 through an online instant messaging service. Despite living in different states, Nicole in New Hampshire, Billy in Connecticut, their bond intensified rapidly. Messages, phone calls, and letters became a daily ritual, and within days they professed a love that would prove all-consuming. But Jean Domenico, Nicole's devoted and protective mother, stood firmly in opposition. She denied their requests for Nicole's legal emancipation and objected to their plans to live together, fearing the relationship was dangerous and impulsive. Resentment brewed between the teenagers, transforming into a deadly resolve. They tried subtle methods first, poisoning her coffee creamer and attempting to ignite the home's oil tank, but these failed. On August 6, 2003, their plan culminated in tragedy. As Jean returned home from work, Billy confronted her. Words turned to violence. He struck her with a baseball bat and then stabbed her multiple times. Nicole played her part, assisting with covering up evidence and establishing alibis. The community was left reeling. Jean, a respected paraprofessional at Birch Hill Elementary and active sports coach, was deeply loved. Her sudden death left a void that was felt by friends, colleagues, and neighbors alike. Investigators quickly apprehended both teens. Nicole pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, agreeing to testify against Billy, who was convicted of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder, earning a life sentence without parole. Nicole was sentenced to a minimum of 35 years in prison in 2005.
While behind bars, Nicole pursued education, earning her GED and an associate degree, showing remorse and a desire to make amends. In March 2025, a judge suspended the remainder of her sentence, making her eligible for parole. During the hearing, she expressed a commitment to help troubled youth, saying, "I want to improve lives rather than destroy them." Nicole Kacinskis' story is a stark reminder of how adolescent impulsivity, unchecked emotions, and obsessive relationships can spiral into devastating consequences. It highlights the importance of parental guidance, mental health awareness, and recognizing warning signs before it's too late. On the morning of January 29, 1979, Grover Cleveland Elementary School in San Diego became the scene of a nightmare. 16-year-old Brenda Spencer opened fire from her home across the street, killing 2 adults and wounding 9 others, later chilling the nation with her words, "I don't like Mondays. This livens up the day." Brenda Ann Spencer was born on April 3, 1962, in San Diego. She grew up in a home defined by neglect and dysfunction. Living with her father in a cluttered, impoverished house, both slept on a single mattress. Brenda later alleged she suffered abuse, physical and sexual, at her father's hands, a claim he denied. But the environment was undeniably unstable. Early signs of distress emerged: truancy, fascination with firearms, defiance toward authority, and a growing emotional fragility. In December 1978, just a month before the attack, Brenda's father gifted her a Ruger 1022 semi-automatic rifle with a telescopic sight and 500 rounds of ammunition. She would later remark with eerie detachment, "I asked for a radio and got a rifle," seeing the gift as tacit approval for her darkest impulses. That Monday morning, Brenda set up across the street from the schoolyard. She fired 36 rounds, killing Principal Burton Ragg and custodian Mike Sukar as they tried to shield students. 8 children and a police officer were injured. Brenda then barricaded herself in her home, beginning a 6-hour standoff. During negotiations, she spoke to a reporter, repeating her infamous phrase about Mondays. Law enforcement finally persuaded her to surrender with the promise of a meal from Burger King. Brenda was charged as an adult, pleaded guilty to 2 counts of murder and assault with a deadly weapon, and in April 1980 was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. Over the decades, she has been denied parole repeatedly, most recently in February 2025. Her actions sparked nationwide debate on gun control, mental health, and school safety, leaving an indelible mark on the history of American school shootings. From New Hampshire's calculated familial murder to California's shocking schoolyard massacre, these cases underscore a chilling truth. When adolescent turmoil goes unaddressed, the consequences can ripple far beyond the home, forever scarring communities. It was a typical morning at Dillard High School in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Hallways filled with chatter, laughter, and the rush to beat the bell. But in a single heartbeat, the routine was shattered by a gunshot, and 15-year-old Amanda Collette lay dying in the hallway, shot by someone she trusted, her best friend, Teah Wimberly. Teah Wimberly and Amanda Collette had shared years of friendship. From elementary school classrooms to middle school hallways, they were inseparable. Laughter, shared secrets, and the closeness of adolescence defined their bond. But as they grew older, a dangerous shift began. Teah, who identified as gay, developed feelings for Amanda. What started as innocent affection escalated into obsession when Amanda did not return those feelings. Rejection, for Teah, was more than emotional. It became unbearable, festering into anger, confusion, and a sense of betrayal. In the weeks leading up to November 12, 2008, warning signs appeared. Teah posted cryptic messages online, sent troubling texts, and confided in friends about thoughts of self-harm and harming others. She had begun cutting herself, a silent cry for help that went largely unnoticed. Friends and teachers saw her struggle, but did not grasp the urgency of the situation. Teah's mental health deteriorated in plain sight, and the weight of unprocessed emotions grew heavier each day. On that fateful morning, Teah packed a .22 caliber handgun into her backpack and arrived at school as if it were any other day. Security measures were minimal. Metal detectors were inactive, leaving her weapon unchecked. She waited for Amanda in the hallway, a familiar scene of adolescent life. Witnesses described the encounter as surreal, the normal flow of school shattered in a single moment. Words were exchanged, a gun was drawn, and one shot was fired into Amanda's chest. She fell instantly, blood soaking the tile beneath her. Screams filled the hallways, students scattered, and teachers rushed to her side. Despite immediate medical attention, Amanda Collette was pronounced dead shortly after arriving at the hospital. Teah did not flee. She walked to a nearby restaurant, trembling, and borrowed a phone to call 911. Her words were chilling, yet revealing. "I just shot my friend. I didn't mean to kill her. I just wanted her to hurt like I hurt." Police arrived minutes later to find her still in her school uniform, her backpack containing the weapon that ended a life. The investigation painted a portrait of a troubled teen. Teah had been primarily raised by her grandparents, grappling with identity,
abandonment, and depression from an early age. Amanda had become her anchor, the one person who truly understood her. When that connection faltered, Teah's fragile perception of reality collapsed, interpreting normal social distance as betrayal, pushing her toward an irreversible act. In court, prosecutors charged Teah as an adult with second-degree murder and possession of a firearm on school property. Her defense described her as a vulnerable, isolated teenager struggling with untreated mental health issues and a lack of support from the adults around her. Despite her youth, the severity of her actions required adult accountability.
The trial was emotionally charged. Amanda's parents sat in grief as prosecutors recounted the events leading to her death. Teah, shackled and tearful, broke down repeatedly. She addressed Amanda's parents directly, saying, "I know saying I'm sorry will never be enough, but I truly am sorry for taking your baby's life." The apology, heartfelt as it was, could never undo the devastation left behind. In March 2010, Teah Wimberly was sentenced to 25 years in prison, followed by 5 years of probation. At 16, she faced a lifetime behind bars. Amanda's family also pursued a wrongful death lawsuit against the Broward County School Board, arguing that clear warning signs, including a student report of Teah's intentions, had been ignored. In 2012, the district settled for $525,000, a small acknowledgement of systemic failure. The Dillard High School shooting was more than a tragedy. It highlighted the consequences of neglected mental health, ignored warning signs, and insufficient preventative measures. Amanda Collette's life was stolen in a single instant, leaving grief, unanswered questions, and a community forever altered. Teah Wimberly's story is a stark reminder that danger can exist even among friends, and that silent suffering, left unaddressed, can erupt in ways no one anticipates.
In June 2009, an upscale home in El Dorado Hills, California, became the setting of a nightmare no parent could imagine. 14-year-old Tylar Witt and her 19-year-old boyfriend, Stephen Culver, brutally murdered her mother in cold blood, then fled together, convinced their twisted love justified murder. Tylar Witt was an only child, described by friends and neighbors as bright, artistic, and creative. She lived in a comfortable home under the watchful eye of her mother, Joanne Witt, a dedicated engineer for the California Department of Transportation. Joanne was strict but loving, fiercely protective, and deeply invested in her daughter's future. To her, the world outside was full of dangers, and she worked tirelessly to keep Tyler safe. But in the eyes of her teenage daughter, this protection became a barrier, an obstacle between her and the life she wanted. By early 2009, Joanne discovered the truth about Tyler's secret relationship with Stephen Culver, a 19-year-old drifter with no steady employment and a manipulative streak. Stephen had been staying at the house under the guise of a temporary roommate, but his true intentions quickly became apparent. Joanne confronted the couple, forbade further contact, and went a step further. She reported Stephen for statutory rape, providing authorities with Tyler's diary. The entries detailed her anger, frustration, and obsessive thoughts about her mother, an emotional tempest that would soon turn deadly.
As spring turned to summer, Tyler and Stephen's infatuation transformed into obsession. They didn't just want to be together. They imagined a world where life and death would bind them permanently. The concept of a suicide pact took hold, but Joanne remained a barrier. They convinced themselves that eliminating her was the only path to their freedom, a horrifying and calculated solution. On the night of June 11, 2009, Tyler laced her mother's drink with sleeping pills, ensuring she would be sedated. Joanne drank it, unaware of the betrayal, and retired to bed. Stephen,
guided in by Tylar through an unlocked door, entered Joanne's bedroom. What followed was savage and deliberate. He stabbed her more than 20 times, leaving a trail of blood that soaked the bed and spattered the walls. Scratches and bruises on Joanne's hands revealed her desperate struggle. She fought for her life until the very end. Tylar stood in the hallway humming to block out her mother's screams, a chilling combination of detachment and complicity. After the murder, the pair acted with eerie calm. They adjusted the thermostat to slow decomposition, turned off lights and fled with cash, clothes, a laptop, and a suicide note written like a twisted love letter. The teenagers traveled to San Francisco, checked into a hotel using Joanne's credit card, watched movies, including Donnie Darko, a cult classic exploring time, death, and destiny, and prepared for their final act. Rat poison and sleeping pills were discovered in the room, evidence of a failed suicide attempt. When that plan faltered, they disappeared into the city, blending with the homeless population to evade capture.
Back home, concern mounted when Joanne didn't appear for work. Police conducted a welfare check, discovering her body, and suspicion soon fell on Tylar. A multi-county manhunt ensued, culminating near San Francisco International Airport, where Tylar and Stephen were arrested without resistance. During interviews, both tried to shift blame. Tylar claimed Stephen acted alone. Stephen insisted Tylar pressured him with threats of suicide. But recovered text messages, journals, and letters revealed premeditation. In one chilling note, Tylar wrote, "I want her gone, like dead gone." The evidence left little room for doubt. Tylar accepted a plea deal, pleading guilty to second-degree murder and agreeing to testify against Stephen. She was sentenced to 15 years to life. Stephen was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life without parole. Prosecutors portrayed Tylar as calculating, emphasizing that she had ample opportunities to prevent the murder but chose not to. In a letter to the court, Tylar admitted, "I made the worst mistake of my life. My mom loved me, and I took her away. I will never forgive myself." Reports indicate she has pursued education and mentoring roles in prison, though her eventual release remains uncertain. Joanne Witt is remembered as a devoted mother, intelligent and loving. Her tragic death left the El Dorado Hills community in shock, sparking questions about the dark potential of obsessive teenage love, emotional manipulation, and blurred parental boundaries. Her story serves as a stark reminder. Even the most caring guidance can turn tragic when confronted by obsession and impulsive youth. From a mother killed by the daughter she tried to protect, we now turn to other cases of adolescent obsession, where emotional turmoil erupts in deadly ways, reminding us how fragile the line between love and violence can be.
In a quiet South Carolina home, a 3-year-old girl arrived for what was supposed to be a short, safe visit. By the end of the week, Serenity Richardson was dead, beaten to death by the very people entrusted with her care. The horror of her final days would shake a community and shock a nation. Erica Mae Butts and Shanita Latrice Cunningham were not strangers to Serenity Richardson. They were her godmother and a close friend, people her mother trusted implicitly. In November 2009, Serenity, just 3 years old, was sent from Detroit to Summerville, South Carolina, while her mother, Yeshia Richardson, dealt with the stress of moving. It was meant to be a short, safe visit with familiar faces, but what Serenity experienced was far from safe. From the moment she arrived, the abuse began. Over the course of only a few days, Butts and Cunningham subjected her to relentless and escalating violence. The reasons were horrifyingly trivial: potty training accidents, minor missteps, but the punishment was severe. Reports later revealed a pattern of beatings with belts and plastic coat hangers, bruises layered atop bruises, contusions across her arms, legs, and back, and internal injuries that no toddler should ever endure. The abuse was systematic and intentional, leaving Serenity increasingly weak and frightened. On the day emergency responders arrived, they found Serenity lifeless on the floor. Her tiny body showed both fresh and old injuries, a chilling testimony to days of cruelty. Paramedics rushed her to the hospital, but it was already too late. The coroner would later describe the scene as one of the worst cases of child abuse he had ever seen, a slow, methodical pattern of cruelty inflicted by those sworn to protect her.
The investigation quickly identified Butts and Cunningham as the perpetrators. During police interrogations, both women initially attempted to deflect blame, offering conflicting accounts of what happened. But evidence, bruising patterns, autopsy results, witness testimony was overwhelming. Eventually, both admitted to their roles in Serenity's death. In 2011, Erica Butts entered an Alford plea, acknowledging that the evidence would likely result in a conviction without formally admitting guilt, while Cunningham pleaded guilty. Sentencing was a stark display of justice meeting horror. As the judge read their life sentences without the possibility of parole, Butts collapsed, sobbing uncontrollably, and Cunningham fainted shortly after. The courtroom watched in disbelief. These were the same women who had beaten a 3-year-old to death, now unable to withstand the gravity of their own punishment. Serenity's mother gave a tearful statement, recounting her daughter's smile, laughter, and loving nature, and the unbearable guilt of having entrusted her child to someone who turned out to be a monster. The aftermath of the case resonated far beyond South Carolina. It became a wake-up call about the dangers children face even from trusted adults. Serenity's story highlighted the need for vigilance in child protection and the devastating consequences of misplaced trust. Her death was a painful reminder that sometimes the most horrifying crimes occurred not in the shadows, but behind closed doors, at the hands of those who claim to care.
Today, both Butts and Cunningham remain in prison, serving life sentences without parole. Serenity's name, however, lives on, not for the brutality inflicted upon her, but for the innocence and potential that was stolen. Her story became a symbol of awareness, of the importance of protecting the most vulnerable, and of the lasting impact of violence that begins behind a familiar face. The tragedy of Serenity Richardson shows us that sometimes the greatest dangers hide where we least expect them, and that evil can live quietly in the people we trust the most. In June 2009, the quiet streets of El Dorado Hills, California, hid a darkness no one could have anticipated. 14-year-old Tylar Witt, along with her 19-year-old boyfriend, Stephen Culver, would commit a crime so shocking it would forever scar their community: the murder of her own mother. Tylar Witt was an only child, described by friends as bright, artistic, and imaginative. She lived a comfortable life under the watchful eye of her mother, Joanne Witt, an accomplished engineer with the California Department of Transportation. Joanne was protective and disciplined, determined to shield her daughter from harm and keep her on a path toward a promising future. Yet, to Tylar, this parental vigilance would gradually become a barrier, a force she believed was keeping her from freedom. In early 2009, Joanne discovered her daughter's secret relationship with Stephen Culver, a 19-year-old with no steady employment and a manipulative personality.
Stephen had posed as a friend and temporary house guest, taking advantage of Joanne's trust. Alarmed, Joanne took decisive action. She forbade contact between the two, reported Stephen for statutory rape, and even provided Tylar's diary to authorities. Within its pages were unsettling entries, revealing Tylar's growing anger, resentment, and obsession. Joanne's efforts, intended to protect her child, instead placed her squarely in Tylar's and Stephen's path as an obstacle to be removed. As the spring months passed, the couple's infatuation morphed into dangerous obsession. They imagined a world bound together in life and death, constructing a twisted suicide pact. Joanne's presence stood in the way of their delusion, and the pair devised a horrifyingly calculated plan.
On the night of June 11, 2009, Tyler slipped sleeping pills into her mother's drink, lulling Joanne into a false sense of safety. Once Joanne went to bed, Stephen entered the house through a door left unlocked by Tyler. What followed was brutal. In Joanne's bedroom, Stephen stabbed her more than 20 times. Blood coated the walls and bed, and defensive wounds on Joanne's hands told the story of a mother's desperate fight to survive. Tyler later confessed to standing in the hallway, humming to block out her mother's screams, an act of eerie detachment that underscored her complicity. After the murder, the teenagers acted with chilling calm. They adjusted the thermostat to slow decomposition, turned off the lights, and left with cash, clothes, a laptop, and a suicide note that read more like a perverse love letter than a farewell. Traveling to San Francisco, they checked into a hotel using Joanne's credit card, watched films, including the cult classic Donnie Darko, steeped in themes of death and destiny, and prepared to follow through on their suicide plan. Rat poison and sleeping pills were discovered in the hotel room, evidence of a pact that would never be fulfilled. When their attempt failed, they vanished into the streets, blending with the homeless population.
During interrogation, both attempted to shift blame. Tyler insisted Stephen acted alone, while Stephen claimed Tyler had pressured him with threats of suicide. But text messages, journals, and letters painted a different picture. One particularly chilling note read, "I want her gone," like dead gone, leaving little doubt about Tyler's premeditation. Ultimately, Tyler accepted a plea deal, pleading guilty to second-degree murder and agreeing to testify against Stephen. She received a sentence of 15 years to life, while Stephen was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life without parole. Prosecutors argued Tyler had multiple opportunities to prevent the crime, but chose not to, portraying her as calculating beyond her years. In a heartfelt letter to the court, she admitted, "I made the worst mistake of my life. My mom loved me, and I took her away. I will never forgive myself." Joanne Witt is remembered by family, friends, and colleagues as a devoted mother, fiercely protective and deeply intelligent. Her tragic death shocked the community and highlighted the deadly consequences when emotional manipulation, adolescent obsession, and blurred boundaries intersect. From the horrifying betrayal of a mother by her own child, we now turn to cases where teenage impulse and obsession spiral into violence, revealing how youthful desire and manipulation can escalate into irreversible tragedy.
In the quiet suburbs of Mississauga, Ontario, a shocking act of betrayal unfolded. Two teenage sisters, barely 15 and 16, meticulously drowned their own mother and then went out for milkshakes, pretending their lives were normal. Linda Andersen was a single mother struggling to keep her family afloat. Working long hours, battling alcoholism, and grappling with depression, she tried to provide for her 3 daughters. Yet despite her efforts, life felt inadequate to them. Her daughters, bright, ambitious, and academically successful, grew increasingly resentful. They saw their friends enjoying vacations, designer clothes, and carefree lives, luxuries their mother could not provide. Over time, admiration and love gave way to frustration, and resentment became fixation. By late 2002, fantasies of her death had entered their conversations. This was no passing thought. They began openly plotting, sharing their ideas in school chat apps and in whispered discussions during breaks. They even joked about the perfect plan with classmates, normalizing what would later become a gruesome reality. The sisters fixated on Linda's life insurance policy, worth around $133,000, seeing it as the ticket to the lifestyle they believed they deserved. One casually asked a friend, "Wouldn't it be great if she just died?" The dark humor of adolescence blurred with real intent, and no one around them fully grasped the gravity of their planning.
January 18, 2003, became the day their deadly plan came to life. Under the pretense of a relaxing bath, the sisters encouraged their mother to drink heavily, mixing vodka with Tylenol 3 pills to ensure she was sedated. Once Linda was incapacitated, one sister held her mother's head underwater while the other silently observed, making certain the act was complete. Minutes passed, each one cementing the horror of their crime. When they were satisfied, they cleaned the scene with meticulous care, wiping away evidence as if rehearsing a script. Then, in an almost surreal display of normalcy, they left the house with friends for milkshakes, laughing and conversing as if nothing had occurred. Hours later, they returned home and called 911, reporting the drowning as accidental, a tragic mishap they claimed. Police investigated and found no immediate signs of foul play. The death was ruled accidental, and the case was closed. For nearly a year, the sisters carried the secret with chilling composure. They continued their school routines, social lives, and quiet anticipation of the life the insurance money would provide. But darkness has a way of emerging. In early 2004, one sister confessed at a party, boasting about their cleverness. That friend went straight to authorities, unraveling the meticulously maintained illusion. Police uncovered damning evidence, chat logs detailing step-by-step murder instructions, online searches on drowning and crime scene cleanup, and journals with calculated to-do lists. Even television crime dramas had become a research tool, showing them exactly how long someone needed to be submerged to ensure death.
In 2005, justice caught up. Both sisters were arrested and charged with first-degree murder. Being minors, their identities were legally protected under Canada's Youth Criminal Justice Act. Tried separately, each received the maximum sentence allowed for juveniles, 10 years, including 6 years in custody and 4 under community supervision. While incarcerated, both completed high school and participated in counseling programs. One sister was released in 2009, the other in 2010, and both have since assumed new identities, their past legally sealed. The case of the bathtub girls stunned Canada and the world. How could 2 honor students plan and execute such a calculated murder? Psychologists debated the influence of family dysfunction, teenage narcissism, and emerging sociopathic tendencies, yet none fully explained the chilling premeditation. Linda Andersen, a flawed but devoted mother, did not deserve her fate, drowned by the very children she worked to protect. Her death became a cautionary tale about teenage obsession, entitlement, and the dangers of unchecked resentment. The story inspired the book The Class Project, How to Kill a Mother, and the film Perfect Sisters, starring Abigail Breslin and Georgie Henley. Both explored the psychological and emotional landscape behind the murder, yet even Hollywood could not fully capture the coldness of the crime. From this chilling murder in suburban Canada, we now turn to cases where teenage inner turmoil erupts outward, leaving a wider circle of victims in its wake, and challenging communities to understand the dark complexities of youth violence.
Every click helps keep these stories alive. Subscribe today.